Digimon Liberator Column Tips 11 features Battle Coverage 3 versus the Crystal Sea Palace. This time we're covering the clash between Shoto's Bird deck and Yao's Crystal Sea Palace deck. Since Shoto can't include Zefagamon in his deck, he's made some modifications from his previous Bird deck. It'll be interesting to see what strategies he has up his sleeve this time. He'll be facing Yao, who'll be using a newly released deck. Her deck does have a previous incarnation, namely her Aquatic deck, that specializes in playing and attaching Digivolution card Digimon to activate their effects. However, its playstyle has been transformed by the addition of the Ocean Sovereign Ryugumon and its followers. Given the nature of these decks, what we're about to witness will feel familiar, yet unfamiliar. The stage is Lapis Marine's soaring stadium tower, with a backdrop of brilliant blue skies and sparkling waves. If Shoto can prove he has what it takes, he'll be accepted onto the debugging team. Going first, Shoto hatches a Fluffymon and digivolves it into Muchomon. Next, he calls upon Teromon and utilizes its on-play effect to add 2 cards to his hand, a Muchomon and his Tama card that has a cost of 4. With the memory gauge at 3, Yao begins her first turn by hatching Puyoyomon before performing a string of digivolutions, first into Sangomon, then into Shellmon, and finally Marine Bullmon. She ends up with an imposing level 5 in her breeding area while shifting the memory gauge to 2 on Shoto's side. Beginning his second turn, Shoto opts not to deploy Muchomon from the breeding area into the battle area. This is most likely because Yao has a level 5 in her breeding area, making it preferable to continue digivolving in his own. In the early stages, when both players are performing multiple digivolutions, it's often advantageous to be the second player to move your Digimon from the breeding area, taking advantage of a when digivolving effect that gets rid of an opponent's Digimon. And as it happens, Shoto's deck contains plenty of level 6 Digimon with such effects. Deciding not to be overly offensive here is not cowardly, but cunning. He sends Theromon in the battle area to attack, but it loses the security battle. Rounding out his turn, he digivolves Muchomon into Kokatorimon in the breeding area and plays his 4-cost Tama card, ensuring he'll start his next turn with 3 memory. Despite losing a Digimon and giving Yao 4 memory, things could be worse since he's set up to digivolve up to level 6 next turn. Yao begins her second turn by commanding the gigantic Marine Bullmon to move from the breeding area to the battle area. The main phase then arrives, and she plays her Tama card for 4 memory, before attacking Shoto's security with Marine Bullmon. Upon attacking, she gets to use her Tama card's effect to place Swimmon as Marine Bullmon's Digivolution card, giving it jamming as an inherited effect. Marine Bullmon would have had to face a 12,000 DP Eaglemon from the security, but it strides ahead unfaced, and it gets to use its end of attack effect to boot. The inherited effects of Sangomon and Shellmon increase Yao's memory, allowing her to make one final move, playing Shikuemon for a cost of 5. We're only 2 turns in, but Yao has already made clear how she attained Game Master status. Her bold yet efficient use of memory has put her in a strong position, with her Tama card in play and only 3 memory granted to Shoto. Shoto begins his third turn with Kokatorimon in his breeding area and Parrotmon and Eaglemon in his hand. What should he do? Suppose I suspend Seekmon with Parrotmon's when digivolving effect, and then attack it. I have piercing from an inherited effect too. After the security battle, I'll be able to use Eaglemon's when digivolving effect to return Marine Bullmon to the hand. Then I'd be ahead in terms of both field strength and remaining security cards. There's a risk of Parrotmon losing the security battle, but to have any hope of beating Yao, I'll have to take it on. With a plan decided, he starts to go through the steps, digivolving Kokatorimon in the battle area into Parrotmon and attacking Shikamon, but that's when he hits a snag, losing Parrotmon due to Puyoyomon's inherited effect. This is a blowback type effect and causes both players to lose a Digimon. The drawback for the user is that only the opponent gets to draw a card, but Marine Bullmon's Decode, blue level 4, covers for this. When a Digimon with Decode has to leave the field, you can play a Digimon from its Digivolution cards with a certain level, And so, in this scenario, with Marine Bullmon about to leave the field, its inherited effect from Puyoyomon lets Yao play the Digivolution card Shellmon. When all is done and dusted, Shoto loses the Digimon on his playing field, while Yao ends up with 2 level 4s. But even though his initial plan fell apart, Shoto looks far from put out. As a final move, he plays Muchomon in preparation for his next turn. At the beginning of Yao's 3rd turn, she has a strong field and no obstacles in her way. It's about as good an opportunity as any to attack. In the breeding phase, she hatches Puyoyomon, and then in the main phase, she attacks Shoto's security with the Shikemon and Shellmon in the battle area. Shikemon doesn't survive the initial security battle, but she's able to bestow Shellmon with jamming by placing Swimmon as its Digivolution card through her Tama card's effect. However, when Shellmon attacks, Galemon emerges from security. This is bad news since its security effect allows Shoto to play another Galemon with a cost of 4, thus turning the tables in the battle area, numerically at least. Yao follows up with another chain of Digivolutions in her breeding area, ending up with Marine Bullmon again and giving Shoto 3 memory to start his 4th turn. He has 2 Digimon, the same number as Yao, but they're level 3 and 4 and much weaker than hers. A poorly planned turn here would seal his defeat, and so he pauses to think. A few seconds of intense concentration later, he breaks the silence, declaring that he'll hatch a Digiegg and Digivolve Fluffymon into Pteromon in preparation for his next turns, and then, keeping up the pressure, he attacks Yao's security with Muchomon successfully, as the card revealed is another of the Tama card Yao already has in play. Next, he digivolves Galemon into Deramon and uses it to make another security attack, bringing them level in terms of number of cards remaining. Shoto is still at a disadvantage on the playing field, but that's about to change too. He finally manages to bring out Eaglemon and use its when digivolving effect to return Shellmon to Yao's hand. It looks like he could just be in a winning position here, thanks to this aggressive play, although he has granted Yao 4 memory for her 4th turn. As before, Yao begins by moving Marine Bullmon out of the breeding area. This time, though, she's not stopping at level 5. Paying a cost of 4, she declares a Digivolution. The Crystal Sea Palace is named after a location in the Eastern digital world under a certain Digimon's rule. And now, this Digimon arrives in Lapis Marine, its splendorous form sparkling in several shades of blue. Yao wastes no time, using Ryugumon's when digivolving effect to play the Digivolution card, Sangomon. With Sangomon's on-play effect, Yao adds 2 cards from the top of her deck to her hand, Shikemon and the option card Waratsumi Purification. She then attacks Shoto's security with Ryugumon, which allows her to place Huankunmon as its Digivolution card through her Tama card's effect. Shoto's security card is his Tama card with a cost of 3. This is fortunate since it means he'll start his next turn with 1 more memory, but before that, Ryugumon has 2 end-of-attack inherited effects to resolve. The first is Shellmon's, giving Yao 1 more memory. Following this is Marine Bullmon's, which allows Yao to play that same Shellmon. She then uses the other card she just drew with Sangomon, Waratsumi Purification. By placing the Sangomon on her field at the bottom of her deck, she gets to sweep away Shoto's Eaglemon, returning it to his hand. Eaglemon's Fortitude is no help here, as it doesn't protect against effects that return a card to the hand or deck. Playing a Digivolution card, Digimon, and then immediately using it as the cost for a removal effect, it's a combination that hits like a rushing wave. A Crystal Sea Palace deck is truly formidable when in full flow, and Shoto is at risk of being dragged under. With 1 security card left and only Pteromon in his breeding area and Muchomon on his playing field, his chances of victory are looking slim. Will 4 memory on his 5th turn be enough to take down the Deep Sea Sovereign? According to Cool Boy, losing wouldn't necessarily sink his hopes of being accepted on the debugging team, but what true card game player is ever okay with taking an L, even when on the ropes in a friendly match? The old Shoto's fighting spirit would have been extinguished by the Crystal Sea Palace's majesty, but not now. He sends Terramon out from the breeding area. Since Yao has Digimon on her field, this increases his memory to 5 through his Tama card's Start of Your Main Phase effect. Paying 1 and then 3 memory, he digivolves Terramon into Galemon and then Grand Galemon, The latter's when digivolving effect renders it unaffected by the opponent's effects by suspending itself, meaning it won't face any trouble from Ryugumon's inherited effect from Puyoyomon. And then, for another 3 memory, another Digivolution, the serenity of the Great Sea is torn apart by enchanted gusts of wind, and with this, medieval gallant Mon appears, wielding Dynas, a magic lance as tall as its swinger. This hero from another dimension is Shoto's new ace card, and it stands fearlessly before the Crystal Sea Palace's sovereign, and then, with a flash of crimson medieval gallant Mons when digivolving effect suspends Shellmon, at this point, the turn would normally pass to Yao, as the memory gauge is at 2 on her side. However, a Vortex Warrior is at work here. With an end-of-your-turn effect, Shoto's tame a card with a cost of 3 unsuspends Medieval Gallant Mon, and also grants it Piercing and Blocker. And since it has Vortex, it can attack Shellmon. On top of this, its Alliance ability comes into play, allowing it to suspend Muchomon to gain 1000 DP, and granting Security Attack +1. And when Muchomon is suspended, it confers a further boost of 3000 DP. Furthermore, Medieval Gallant Mon won't stay suspended after attacking either, thanks to its inherited effect from Grangilmon. With Dynas bearing down on Shellmon, Yao turns to the inherited effect of Puyoyomon, returning Muchomon to Shoto's hand. Since Medieval Gallant Mon can't be returned to the hand, her alternate strategy is to play Huankun-mon through Decode and then use its on-play effect. This would prevent Shellmon's deletion, thereby negating Medieval Gallant Mon's piercing, and with that, Shoto's turn would end. However, thanks to Medieval Gallant Mon's all-turns effect, it's when Digivolving effect comes into play a second time. Shoto suspends Huankun-mon, and then he opts for the effect he didn't use earlier, deleting a Digimon whose DP is sufficiently low, in this case 11,000 or less, due to there being 2 Digimon suspended. According to the Digimon card game rules, the turn player's Digimon card effects resolve before their opponents. This means that deleting an opponent's Digimon straight after it's played prevents the resolution of its on-play effect. And that's exactly what happens with Huankun-mon here, an outcome brought about by clever forward thinking from Shoto. The path is clear for Dynas Strike and Shellmon is deleted. In one fell swoop, Shoto has taken down 2 security cards and gained 3 memory through an inherited effect, shifting the gauge to 1 on his side. The fearsome gale has parted the waters, leaving Yao with no security. And as Medieval Gallant Mon stands ready to land the decisive blow, Shoto shouts out in triumph. Although complicated, this battle was fascinating to watch, with the tide turning back and forth each turn. In the end, the scales of victory tipped in Shoto Kasama's favor, with his pluckiness and trust in his deck winning through. Digimon Liberator artist Usagibochi posted about the Digimon Liberator tips column, promoting this latest entry and encouraging fans to reflect on the battle between Yao and Shoto through text instead of images this time. Usagibochi mentioned that since they are currently on a business trip to Totsuka, they would share an old practice drawing of Zephagamon, despite this Digimon being notably absent in that entry. Zephagamon looks stunning, depicted with a 3D effect and greenish tones,